You can't just keep a baby without proving you're fit. The board needs verification, Logan. Cynthia Bellamy, president of our HOA board, stood at the foot of our porch like she owned it, one hand on her hip, the other waving a manila envelope like it was some royal decree. Her floral blouse fluttered in the breeze, but her eyes were cold, controlled, predatory. I didn't answer her, not yet. She tapped the envelope against her wrist and gave me a smile, tight, false. You know how these things work. We have to be sure he's yours. Birth certificate, custody papers, pediatric records. Otherwise, the HOA has the right to escalate this too. That clause you're quoting, I said calmly, was invalidated in 2011. It violates Virginia state housing law, and the family law mediator I spoke to yesterday agrees. She blinked, just once. The envelope stopped moving. If you've ever had to defend your family from someone misusing their power, hit subscribe right now, because what she did next nearly got our son taken away. I stepped down from the porch, slow and controlled. My boots crunched the gravel. My name's Logan Maddox. I'm not some off-the-books tenant you can push out with fines and noise complaints. I own this home outright. Bought it with veteran land credit after 19 years and 5 deployments. That swing? I nodded toward the porch. My SEAL team had it custom made when I retired. My wife picked the color. We hung it together the day we moved in. I know how to hold a perimeter, and I know how to protect what matters. I wasn't posturing. I didn't need to. Behind me, the porch swing creaked softly in the wind. Cedar, handmade, a gift from my brothers. A reminder that peace had to be earned, but once earned, it needed to be protected. When we moved to Waverly Shores 3 months ago, we thought we'd finally found rest, lakeside views, tight-knit neighbors. A good place to raise our son, who would come early and quiet and healthy. But Cynthia had other ideas. Within 10 days of moving in, we got our first violation notice for leaving infant items in public view, a stroller, a car seat. 2 weeks later, a notice about unauthorized family expansion. Then came the fines. Then came the security patrols. Then came the letters. We tried ignoring it. Thought it was just overzealous paperwork. But then Maya stopped sleeping. I found her crying in the nursery one morning, holding our son like someone might take him. That was the morning I called my JAG friend in D.C. That was the day I realized I wasn't done fighting, not when it came to them. I'm not asking, Cynthia said again, her voice sharper now. If you refuse to comply, we'll be forced to report this to Child Protective Services. The sound that left my throat wasn't quite a laugh. It was lower, meaner. You really want to open that door, Cynthia? You think I haven't already documented every letter, every patrol time, every clause you twisted to harass my wife while she's recovering from birth? She didn't answer, but her hand lowered. And for what? Because we don't look like your brochures? Because we keep our lights on past 10? Or because Maya had a panic attack at the community meeting and didn't clap for your flower display award? I could see her eyes dart. Not fear, not yet, just recalibration. Listen carefully, I said. You've stepped into a zone you don't understand. My wife is under medical treatment. My son is under state protection due to early birth risk. You file a false report, and the first people you'll answer to aren't the HOA board. They'll be federal. She backed up one step, just one, but it was enough. Take your envelope, I added, and your empty threats. Next time you come to my property uninvited, I'll file the report, and trust me, mine will stick. The wind picked up again. The porch swing moved gently, creaking. Maya stepped out, baby in arms, and met my eyes. I gave her a nod. We weren't running anymore. Where are you watching from? Tell me. Because people like Cynthia are in every neighborhood. Cynthia backed away from the porch, clutching her envelope like it might still save her. She didn't say anything else, just turned, brisk and stiff, and marched down the walkway like the fight was over. It wasn't. The next morning, Maya stayed in bed longer than usual. I didn't push her. She'd been holding on with threads, and I wasn't going to be the one to snap them. I brewed coffee, fed the baby, and got him down for a nap before heading out. Waverly Shores held a mandatory community unity event once a month. This one was in the community garden near the lake. I hadn't gone before. I went now. When I arrived, Cynthia was already there, smiling, laughing, holding a clipboard. You'd think yesterday hadn't happened. She waved to an elderly couple, nodded at a young family, and made a show of helping a woman with gardening gloves plant tomatoes. The whole thing had the stage shine of a press event. But under the surface, I could feel it. The way people's eyes dropped when they saw me. How they whispered just a second too long. The shift in posture. The silence that trailed behind me like a shadow. I found an open bench in the shade and watched. Across the walkway, a dad was being quietly scolded by another board member for overstaying his reserved time at the community sandbox. A mother with a toddler on her hip walked away from the splash zone with tears in her eyes after being told her permit had expired. And then I saw it. Cynthia, arms crossed, staring down a teenage boy with a service dog. She pointed at a rule sign. He left. It wasn't just us. I pulled out my phone and started recording. It wasn't about violations. It was about targeting, quiet, patterned, strategic. 15 minutes in, someone finally approached me. Not Cynthia. A man in his 60s, strong posture, fireman's gait. "Logan, right?" he said, keeping his voice low. "Terrell Gaines, HOA board." I nodded. "I've heard of you." He glanced over his shoulder, then sat. "I heard what happened yesterday." I didn't say anything. "I've been noticing things too," he added. "This isn't the first time she's overreached. You're not the first family." "Then why hasn't anyone stopped her?" He gave me a long, weary look. "Because most folks here are scared, not of fines, of being frozen out, losing amenities, reputation, access. This place runs on appearances. And you? I've been keeping track, quietly. But it's hard when everyone's scared to even talk." I studied him. He wasn't just conflicted. He was torn in half, still playing the game, still holding the line, but something in him wanted out. "She's using HOA authority to push people out," I said. "That makes it federal, fair housing laws." He gave the faintest nod. "I know." That's when it clicked. This wasn't just harassment. It was a pattern, a strategic displacement campaign hiding behind neighborhood rules. And Cynthia wasn't just breaking policy. She was building power. I stood. "I need everything you have, names, incidents, patterns." Terrell looked up at me. "You planning to go after her?" "No," I said. "I'm planning to go over her." He didn't smile, but he didn't say no either. I walked back toward the playground, keeping my camera low, recording more than just scenes. I was logging timestamps, documenting who got approached, what was said, and who walked away humiliated. A woman with twins got stopped for having a non-approved picnic blanket. A man in a wheelchair was redirected from the paved path because it was under review. It wasn't random, it was surgical. That afternoon, I uploaded everything to a locked drive and sent a silent ping to my JAG contact. I didn't need him yet, but I would. And when I did, it'd be with proof, documented, time-stamped, systemic. At home, Maya was still curled up with the baby when I returned. I knelt beside the swing and watched them sleep through the screen door. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the footage again, watched it all, labeled it, archived it. They didn't just come for us. They'd been doing this for years. The next morning, my inbox pinged with a short message. "Come to the clubhouse at 9. She won't be there. TG." I didn't hesitate. I left Maya asleep and walked the 2 blocks in silence. The sun hadn't burned through the mist yet, and Waverly Shores looked almost peaceful, like nothing was wrong, like the HOA wasn't slowly choking the life out of anyone who didn't fit their picture-perfect template. The clubhouse was unlocked, empty. I stepped inside and followed the quiet hum of ceiling fans toward the small office in the back, the one marked "Board Use Only." Terrell Gaines stood near the window with his back to me, arms folded tight, shoulders slightly hunched. His button-down was crisp, but the collar was askew like he'd thrown it on in a rush. He didn't turn when I entered. "Appreciate you coming," he said, low and steady. I closed the door behind me. "You said she won't be here?" He nodded, still not turning. "Cynthia's doing her monthly inspection run with Judy. Won't be back until noon." His hand hovered near a folder on the desk, but didn't touch it. The way his fingers twitched, like he was reaching for something hot, told me everything. He was fighting himself. "I watched your footage," he said. "All of it. You weren't wrong." I waited. Silence worked better than pushing. Terrell finally turned, eyes tired but alert. He gestured to a chair across from him, then sat down slowly, like the air had grown heavier just for him. His left leg bounced once, then stopped when he noticed. He laced his fingers together, knuckles whitening. I've been on the board for 6 years. I joined to keep things fair, keep folks safe. At first, Cynthia seemed like she had the community in mind. She was sharp, knew the bylaws backward, cleaned up a lot of messes, but his voice cracked slightly. He cleared it fast. Then she started changing the rules, quietly, clauses about perception-based wellness, redefining violations as behavioral nuisances, started sending notices that didn't go through proper vote channels. Why didn't you say anything? He looked at the ceiling, not avoiding, searching. Because I've seen what happens to people who do. They get locked out of the pool keycard system, emails get ignored, kids denied clubhouse rentals. It's not official, it's soft power, but it works, makes people fall in line. He opened the desk drawer, slowly, like it might bite, pulled out a spiral notebook, thick and worn, set it on the table without opening it. He stared at it like it held a bomb. I started tracking things, names, patterns, warnings before violations, unexplained votes. I don't have everything, but I have enough. Still, he didn't open it. His fingers hovered above the cover, then pulled back. But once this leaves this room, there's no taking it back. You don't have to give it to me, I said, but you have to decide who you are. He blinked slowly. I've seen people hesitate right before kicking down a door, I continued. Some because they're afraid of what's inside. Some because they know the minute they step through, everything changes. Terrell exhaled through his nose, deep and shaky. He opened the notebook, not to a random page, to one he'd bookmarked. I didn't read it yet. I watched him. His eyes weren't on the paper. They were on the door, like he was waiting for Cynthia to burst in and call him a traitor. She's not untouchable, I said. No, he replied. But she's smart. She knows how to stay just on the line, make people doubt themselves. It's not just about rules anymore. It's about control. I leaned forward. Then let's make it about truth. He slid the notebook across the desk, 1 inch, then another, until it touched my hand. She's going to know it was me, he muttered. I met his eyes. Then make sure she knows you didn't do it alone. For a second, I saw something behind his face. Fear, pride, maybe both. His posture eased, just slightly, like something deep inside him had made peace with the cost. I stood, notebook in hand. This is the first step, but it won't be the last. He gave one nod, barely visible. As I walked out of the clubhouse, the sun finally cut through the mist. Waverly Shores looked the same, but nothing was. I laid the notebook flat on my office desk, closed the door, and locked it. The pages were packed. Dates, names, vote tallies that didn't match meeting records, violations issued to only certain families. It was organized like an evidence file. Terrell hadn't just noticed. He'd been building a case in silence for years. I'd barely made it 10 pages in when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, local area code. I let it ring. A second later, a text came through. Your gate camera violates HOA visual perimeter standards. Remove it within 24 hours or be fined $500 day. I didn't respond. I opened the next page, a diagram. Cynthia had drawn a map of lot easements and circled properties flagged as non-compliant. Terrell had added his own note in the margin. 2 of these families received eviction pressure after refusal. My screen lit up again. Email this time. Subject: Notice of breach. Unauthorized surveillance. Body: HOA security compliance team has flagged your external monitoring systems. Per Section 9.2, all devices must be approved and non-invasive. Failure to comply may result in reporting to local law enforcement or escalation to legal counsel. Escalation. They were trying to box me in. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling tiles. I'd been in rooms like this before, waiting for enemy positions to reveal themselves, knowing the clock was ticking. Only this wasn't Iraq, this wasn't Somalia, this was Virginia, and my wife was home with our son. I clicked open the HOA bylaws file on my office laptop. Then I opened a second window, a direct link to Virginia's state housing code. I started comparing them line by line. 3 clauses in, I found it. HOA Section 9.2 referenced monitoring systems, but didn't define invasive. The state statute did, very clearly. My camera, facing only my gate and using motion-triggered activation, was compliant, perfectly legal. They were bluffing, again. But they were getting more aggressive. Another ping. This time, a voicemail. Logan Maddox, this is Diane Tran with Summit Child and Family Services. We've received a community-based welfare alert referencing a possible custodial dispute involving your infant son. We'd like to schedule a non-invasive home check to ensure the safety of all involved. I didn't move, just stared at the screen. Cynthia had done it. She'd filed the CPS report. I breathed once, twice, kept my hands on the desk to stop them from clenching. I clicked download on the voicemail and copied it into the evidence folder. Then I stood. My office window overlooked the Chesapeake. Sunlight glinted off the water in sharp, broken patterns. I watched it for a long minute before dialing my JAG contact. He picked up on the second ring. Logan, I was expecting your call. I need 2 things, I said. 1, a housing rights attorney, someone who knows HOA overreach inside and out. 2, I need a federal mediator willing to look at a case built on insider testimony. Give me 48 hours. I'll give you 24. I ended the call and sat back down, opened Terrell's notebook again. This wasn't just escalation. It was provocation. Cynthia was trying to corner me, to force me to lash out, lose control, become the stereotype she could use to finish the job. She didn't know what I was trained for. She didn't know how many times I'd sat still, composed, as the clock ran out on someone else's plan. I opened the surveillance footage folder and queued up the new clips. Every patrol car that passed twice in an hour. Every neighbor who looked the other way. Every slow pan of Cynthia standing too close to my property line. The HOA wasn't a board anymore. It was an operation. And it had just crossed into hostile territory. That night, I pulled Maya aside, showed her the CPS message. She didn't cry. She didn't even speak. She just held our son tighter and nodded. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "We're not reacting. We're responding." Because I wasn't here to prove anything. I was here to dismantle it. Terrell texted me a single word: walk. I met him in the parking lot behind the community clubhouse, the one they used for overflow during HOA-sponsored events. There was no meeting scheduled today, but the lot was half full anyway. I recognized a few board members' cars, including Cynthia's silver crossover, parked in its usual power stance position, nose out, centered like a command post. Terrell was standing near the edge, arms crossed, weight shifting between his boots like something heavy was sitting in his spine. "I only have a few minutes," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "She's inside reviewing vendor contracts." "She filed the CPS report," I said. He didn't react, just nodded once. I waited. He finally said, "That's the 4th family she's done that to in 3 years. My stomach tightened. "With actual reports?" "No, just community wellness alerts. Always through third-party language, never signs her name. She funnels them through a board liaison, calls it an informal escalation path." "And you have proof?" His eyes flicked toward my pocket like he knew my phone was recording. "Not here, but I have names, and I know where she slips up." I leaned against the fence. "Show me." He exhaled through his nose. "It's in how she frames violations. See, HOA boards aren't allowed to define mental health concerns without a licensed assessor involved. But she uses phrases like behavioral volatility and non-conforming parenting practices in private letters. You get enough of those, they build a perception record. That's how she made Maya look unstable." He nodded. "All it takes is a narrative. She plants it early, repeats it in board meetings, then waits for someone to react. Once they do, she documents it as validation. And the families she's done this to? 2 moved, 1 stayed but sold within the year. The 4th, single dad, former EMT, hired a lawyer. She backed off after settlement, but the board minutes from that time vanished. Vanished? Purged from the public log. I only know about them because I was in the room. That was it, the gap. HOA boards are legally required to maintain transparent meeting records. Any manipulation, especially related to discrimination or family status, violates both state and federal housing law. Do you know who her legal cover is? He hesitated. A guy named Powell, local attorney. But here's the twist. He's not a certified HOA compliance lawyer. He's a real estate closer. She uses him for bluff letters. They've never gone to court, not once. My jaw tightened. That meant all her threats, every fine, every report, every so-called violation, were backed by paper, not precedent. You ever hear of 24 CFR Sarah 165? I asked. Terrell shook his head. It's federal, I said. Unlawful housing practices. Includes intimidation, coercion, interference, especially when it affects familial status. CPS reports count. Terrell's posture changed. His hands dropped from his chest. His head tilted slightly. I'd seen that look before, on the faces of team members when a mission puzzle suddenly clicked. You think this could go federal? I don't think, I know. He looked down at his shoes. You gonna take it there? Already started. The wind shifted. A car door slammed in the distance. Somewhere inside the building, Cynthia's voice echoed faintly, sharp, clipped, managerial. Terrell's shoulders hunched again. She's dangerous, he said, not because she breaks the law, but because she bends it until decent people start questioning what's real. I stared at him. Then let's remind them. He gave me a look I couldn't read, part caution, part quiet agreement. I'll email you the redacted meeting notes I've got. Might take a day. They're buried in old board folders. I'll be ready. As we walked back toward the lot, I spotted Cynthia standing by her car, clipboard in hand, sunglasses reflecting the sun like mirrors. She didn't wave, but she watched. And when she turned to go, she paused. Just for a second, enough to tell me she knew something was shifting. When I got home, Maya was outside watering the planters. The baby was asleep inside. She didn't ask what happened. I just said, she used the wrong law. And for the first time in days, Maya smiled. I stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching Maya rock our son in the dim blue light of the night lamp. The air was thick with quiet, soft breathing, the faint creak of the glider, the rhythmic tick of the clock on the wall. She hadn't said much since I got home, just nodded when I told her Cynthia crossed a legal line. But the way she held our son tonight, tighter, steadier, told me everything. For the first time in weeks, there was no fear in her grip. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and sat on the floor beside them. My back against the wall, hands clasped in front of me. She's counting on silence, I said quietly. On people folding, leaving, complying just enough to survive. Maya didn't look down, but her voice came soft. I thought maybe if we were quiet, we could stay. That's how she wins. The baby stirred just slightly, and Maya adjusted without missing a beat. She was a natural, the kind of mother Cynthia's system tried to make invisible. She's about to lose that silence, I said. I opened my laptop on the carpet. No more waiting, no more collecting. Tonight, I was building the timeline. I started dragging files into order, violation notices, emails, video clips, audio messages, HOA meeting schedules, Terrell's notebook scans. Every incident with a date, every clause quoted, every neighbor who'd been stopped, warned, or humiliated. I gave each family an anonymous marker. Family A, Family B, Family C. 4 of them before us. Us as Family E, 5 data points, 5 patterns of abuse. At 11:14 p.m., a reply email came in from the attorney my JAG contact connected me with. Reviewed your outline. You're not just on the right track. You're sitting on a federal discrimination claim. I'll need notarized witness statements and proof of procedural violations. Start with the meeting redactions. I nodded to myself. I'd already messaged Terrell earlier and asked him to dig up any minutes scrubbed from the public board logs. If even one timestamp didn't match, it would confirm data manipulation, a direct breach of HOA transparency requirements. I sent Maya's medical note from her therapist next, not for sympathy, for legal context. The record showed that stress-induced panic episodes started the week of our first HOA fine, a clean chain of cause and effect. The law didn't need to feel, just connect. Do you remember the letter they taped to the stroller? I asked quietly. She nodded. I saved it. Bottom drawer of the dresser. I stood and walked over, careful not to wake the baby, and slid the drawer open. There it was. The original violation. Unauthorized obstruction of visual aesthetic standard. It was folded 3 times, slightly torn at the corner, dated, signed. I scanned it in and added it to the file. Behind me, Maya whispered, Are we going to court? No, I said. We're going to wake them up first. Court comes later, if they don't run first. I stayed up most of the night, finished labeling every piece of evidence. At 3:27 a.m., I clicked share on a private link to the full case file. I sent it to my attorney, my JAG contact, and Terrell. One copy was also sent to the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development with a formal flag request attached. By the time the sun came up, 5 people knew the full story. Cynthia didn't know it yet, but her insulation had cracked. She could fine us. She could posture. But she'd made one mistake too many. She tried to weaponize a law that didn't belong to her. And now the law was turning around. I closed the laptop, kissed Maya's forehead, and stepped outside onto the porch. The swing creaked behind me as the morning wind moved in. I sat down, pulled my phone out, and opened the footage from the garden again. This wasn't just our fight anymore. It never had been. The lake was dead quiet that morning. Still water. No bird song. Just the low hum of wind threading through the trees, like it knew something was coming. Terrell waited near the old lifeguard station, standing with his hands in his pockets and his shoulders drawn in like he was trying to make himself smaller. The structure hadn't been used in years, half sunken in the sand, paint peeling, door hanging loose on a rusted hinge. I approached slowly. He didn't look up until I was 10 feet away. "You came alone?" he asked. I nodded. "Always do when it matters." He gave a small, joyless smile. "You sound like a man who used to walk into worse places." I did. But this one's quieter. That makes it trickier. Terrell glanced back at the lake, then gestured toward the station. We ducked inside. The floor creaked beneath our weight, but the walls still held. Sunlight streaked through a broken board behind us. "I pulled the logs," he said, "from before the settlement family. You remember the one I mentioned? The EMT?" "Yeah." He reached into his coat and pulled out a flash drive. "It's all there. The original vote record, time-stamped, the board minutes, and the redacted public version Cynthia pushed afterward. She erased everything about the complaint, turned it into a landscaping dispute." "You sure this is clean?" "I accessed it through a backup server I wasn't supposed to know existed. The system stores every board draft automatically, even if someone tries to delete it." My eyebrows lifted slightly. "That's the kind of detail lawyers love." He gave a short nod. "That family filed a complaint with the state housing office. Cynthia got scared, settled under a non-disclosure, but this proves she covered it up and tampered with board records to protect herself." He handed me the drive, then didn't let go. "Logan," his voice dropped, "if I give you this, I'm not protected anymore. I won't just lose my seat. I'll lose standing in this community. My family lives here too." I met his eyes. He wasn't posturing. He was asking for a lifeline. "You're not doing this for me," I said. "You're doing it because this stops with us." He nodded once, but it wasn't for me. It was for himself. I took the drive and pocketed it. Then he reached into his jacket again and pulled out a sealed envelope. "What's that?" "My resignation letter," he said. "Dated, but undelivered. You planning to use it?" "Depends on how this plays out." I looked at him closely. "Terrell, you're not a bystander in this anymore. You're a key witness." "I know. I'm just trying to decide if I'm brave enough to stay that way." The silence stretched between us like something sacred. Outside, the wind picked up, pushing water against the rocks in slow, deliberate waves. "I'll make sure you're not alone in this," I said. He looked up, jaw tight. "I don't need protection. I need this to mean something." It already does. We stepped out of the station together. By the time I got home, the drive was already copied, encrypted, and uploaded to both my lawyer and the state mediator. It was the last missing piece, proof that Cynthia had knowingly altered records and misrepresented the basis for enforcement actions. What made it airtight wasn't just the content, it was who it came from, a sitting board member. That afternoon, the HOA sent another notice to our inbox, a final warning. Remove all external surveillance systems or face legal escalation. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent a single email to Cynthia Bellamy. "Cynthia, please be advised that any further correspondence should be directed to our attorney. Sincerely, Logan Maddox." The reply came 2 hours later. Short, cold, noted. And that was it. The tempo had changed. Cynthia knew we weren't just pushing back, we were pushing up. And Terrell, he wasn't just a conflicted witness anymore. He was the wedge that would split the board from within. I spread the files across my office desk like a battlefield map. Terrell's drive, the violation letters, Maya's medical notes, video logs, the CPS voicemail, all of it. Each piece on its own was harassment. Together, it was a campaign. And now, I was done playing defense. The attorney I'd been paired with, Jonathan Reyes, called just after sunrise. His voice carried the clipped cadence of someone who lived inside courtrooms. "Mr. Maddox, I've reviewed the material you sent. You're sitting on multiple grounds of action. Discrimination based on familial status, harassment under housing law, and improper record keeping. If what Terrell provided checks out, it's not just civil, it's criminal tampering." I took a slow breath. "Then we go federal." He didn't pause. "Already drafting the request for intervention, but here's the catch. You need a mediator assigned before the state will act. That requires a complete timeline of events, corroborated by at least one board witness. You'll have it today." When the call ended, I pulled up the encrypted folder and began laying out the case file into a single flowing chain. Date, time, violation, consequence. Each item paired with a photo, a scan, or a recording. When I finished, it read less like a dispute and more like a playbook of targeted abuse. At noon, I called my JAG contact. "We've got tampering evidence. What's our fastest path?" He didn't hesitate. "Housing and Urban Development, Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity Division. If they open a case, the HOA is bound by federal compliance. Bellamy won't just lose her seat. She'll be barred from holding office in any registered HOA." That was the break I needed. Outside authority. Bigger than the board, bigger than the county. Cynthia couldn't maneuver around that. By mid-afternoon, I was on a video call with 3 other families, neighbors who'd been burned by the same tactics, faces tight with the kind of exhaustion I knew too well. A mother of twins who'd been forced to move her playpen inside, a veteran with a therapy dog told to remove the animal or vacate, a young couple fined into selling after repeated noise complaints. I told them what we had. Not the details, not yet. Just enough to make them know the wind was shifting. "You won't stand alone anymore," I said. "But I need your written statements, today." They all agreed. Maya hovered at the edge of the room, listening. When the call ended, she stepped forward and rested her hand on my shoulder. "They believe you." "No," I said, closing the laptop. "They believe themselves again." That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the cedar swing visible through the back window, rocking in the wind like it was listening. I drafted the master document, a case brief formatted for federal intake. Reyes would polish it, file it, and attach Terrell's signed witness confirmation. Every clip and scan embedded, every violation linked to law. At 10:03 p.m., I hit send, not just to Reyes, to the mediator's office, to my JAG contact, and to a backup address on a secure server, one that would auto-release if anything happened to me or the file. The game had changed. We weren't waiting for Cynthia to make the next move. We'd already made it. By midnight, my phone buzzed with a single-line reply from Reyes. "Case brief received. HUD petition filed. Expect acknowledgement within 48 hours. Brace for retaliation." I shut off the lights, kissed Maya, and stepped onto the porch. The swing rocked once, twice, then stilled. The house was quiet, but the war was no longer ours alone. By dawn, the house smelled of coffee and printer ink. My desk was buried under stacks of affidavits, notarized and scanned. Terrell's witness confirmation sat on top, signed in his steady firefighter's hand. 3 neighbors had returned their statements overnight. 2 more were promised by noon. Every page tightened the noose. I walked outside, phone in hand, and crossed the yard to the fence line. The HOA security car rolled by on its second loop of the morning, slowing just long enough for the driver to glance at me. I raised my phone and filmed him until he drove off. Another data point, another entry for the file. At noon, I hosted a quiet cookout in my backyard. Nothing official, nothing on the HOA calendar, just burgers, hot dogs, and paper plates. But the guest list mattered. The families who'd been targeted sat together for the first time, side by side, trading stories that overlapped too neatly to be coincidence. Maya sat with the mother of twins, their kids chasing bubbles on the grass while the women spoke in low voices. The therapy dog stretched in the shade. Laughter broke through once or twice, sharp and fragile, but real. I kept the camera running, not staged, just truth. A group of families existing without incident. No nuisance, no behavioral volatility. Proof that Cynthia's narrative was fiction. After sunset, I uploaded the footage. Labeled it Community Cohesion, contradicts HOA reports. Sent a copy to Reyes, sent another to HUD. If Cynthia tried to argue unfit households, she'd have to explain away the sight of children playing quietly under a blue sky. That night, Terrell called. His voice was tight. She's asking questions, thinks something's moving. She's not wrong. You need to know, she's pushing the board for a closed meeting this week. No minutes, no recordings, just her inner circle. What's the agenda? Unclear, but I heard the words disciplinary action. Might be you, might be me. Good, I said. Let her put it in writing. He was silent a long moment, then softer. You're not like the others. You're not scared. I looked out at the porch swing rocking in the night air. Fear's not the same as surrender. The next morning, I drove to the county clerk's office, requested certified copies of Waverly Shores Incorporation filings and financial disclosures. The clerk raised an eyebrow but handed them over. Another set of records, another line of attack. If Cynthia had mishandled funds or tied community money to her private legal bluffs, the consequences would be swift. Back home, I spread the new documents across the table, snapping photos, cross-checking dates against Terrell's notebook. Patterns emerged, meeting notes that reference budgets, but no corresponding transactions in the official records. A gap, small but visible, enough for Reyes to circle in red when I sent it. By late afternoon, I had everything packaged: surveillance clips, testimonies, financial inconsistencies, altered board minutes, and the CPS voicemail. A full operational dossier. In my old world, it would have been called Mission Prep. Now, it was the final build before a strike. Maya watched me from the kitchen doorway. "You've gone back," she whispered. I paused. "Back? Your eyes, the way you move. You're in mission mode again." I exhaled slowly. "It's the only way to win." She crossed the room and laid our son in my arms. He blinked up at me, small fingers clutching my shirt. "Just remember why you're fighting," she said. I looked at the boy, at the porch swing swaying outside. I remembered. That evening, I hit send on the complete file to Reyes with one line, "Deploy when ready." The preparation was over. The confrontation was next. The board's closed session was set for Friday evening. No notice to residents, no agenda posted. Just a quiet line slipped into the weekly bulletin. Clubhouse unavailable for private meeting. Cynthia thought it would pass unnoticed. She underestimated how closely I was watching. Friday afternoon, I dressed not like a neighbor, but like a professional. Pressed shirt, clean jacket, documents neatly bound in a leather folder. If they wanted to play executive, I would meet them on their field. Reyes called an hour before I left the house. "I've submitted the full package to OSD. They acknowledge receipt. An investigator will be assigned within 72 hours. That means you need to lock them into a public mistake. Get them on record. Make them overreach one more time." "They're planning to," I said. "Tonight." "Then be ready." Maya helped me straighten my jacket before I left. Her hand lingered on my chest. "Are you safe?" I kissed her forehead. "I'm not walking into combat. I'm walking into a room full of people who think they are untouchable. That's different." The clubhouse lobby buzzed faintly with air conditioning when I stepped inside. Board members filed past me toward the back conference room, heads together, whispers clipped. Terrell stood near the vending machine, posture stiff, eyes darting. He didn't approach, but he gave the smallest nod. That was enough. I sat in the lobby with my folder open, phone angled toward the hallway. Recording. Always recording. 30 minutes ticked by before Cynthia herself swept in. Silver hair sharp under the fluorescent lights. Sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She spotted me immediately. "You're not on the agenda," she said flatly. "Neither is a closed session without notice," I replied. Calm, steady. State code requires agenda publication 48 hours in advance. Her lips curled in a thin smile. "This is an informal review, not a session." "Then you won't mind me sitting," In? You're not invited. Then you won't mind me reporting this conversation. I tapped my phone. The red recording light blinked in my palm. Her eyes narrowed, just for a second, before she turned on her heel and stalked into the conference room. The door shut behind her with a snap. That was the last interaction I needed. By 8:01 p.m., board members trickled out again, faces tight, voices low. Terrell was the last to leave. He didn't speak, just pressed a folded paper into my hand as he passed. Then he walked straight to his car and drove off. I unfolded it in the quiet lobby, a draft resolution. Recommendation for disciplinary action against homeowner Logan Maddox, signed by Cynthia. Dated that night. No formal process, no due notice. Just a manufactured decision, ready for distribution. Exactly the overreach Reyes had predicted. I photographed the page, sent it to him instantly. His reply was one line, perfect. This locks them in. Monday, we move. I walked outside into the warm night, folder under my arm, paper still in my pocket. The clubhouse behind me hummed with fluorescent light, but it might as well have been a bunker about to collapse under its own weight. The fight wasn't coming anymore. It had arrived. The notice went out Sunday night. An emergency board meeting scheduled for Monday evening in the clubhouse main hall. This one wasn't hidden. Cynthia wanted an audience. She wanted the community to watch me burn. By 6 p.m., the hall was packed. Folding chairs lined in neat rows, the air heavy with perfume and lawn chemicals. Neighbors murmured in low tones, eyes cutting between me and the board table like they were watching a trial before the verdict. Cynthia sat at the center, gavel in hand, papers stacked in front of her. The board flanked her on both sides, Terrell among them, shoulders rigid, jaw tight. He didn't look at me, but I saw the sweat on his temple. He was here for the same reason I was. The truth had finally come due. Cynthia banged the gavel once. This emergency meeting is now in session. Tonight's agenda concerns disciplinary action against homeowner Logan Maddox, Lot 42, for repeated violations and non-compliance with HOA directives. Mr. Maddox, please stand. I rose slowly, calm, controlled. A low hum rippled through the room. Maya sat near the back, our son in her arms, face pale but steady. She nodded once. I nodded back. Cynthia cleared her throat. Mr. Maddox has refused to comply with repeated directives regarding unauthorized surveillance equipment, unsafe infant care practices, and disruptive behavior. It is the board's recommendation that fines be escalated to maximum levels and legal referral be made. Her words dropped like stones, rehearsed and sharp. She was building momentum, aiming for a strike. I waited for silence. Then I set my folder on the podium. Everything you just heard is a lie, I said, and I can prove it. A ripple of gasps. Cynthia's eyes narrowed, but I didn't give her space to interrupt. I opened the folder, lifted the first document. This, I said, holding up the violation notice taped to our stroller, was issued under Section 3.7, Visual Obstructions. State housing law explicitly forbids applying aesthetic standards to essential child safety equipment. This notice wasn't just overreach, it was illegal. I dropped it on the table. Papers slapped. This, I continued, opening my phone and tapping the speaker, is the voicemail we received last week. Diane Tran's voice filled the hall. We've received a community-based welfare alert referencing a possible custodial dispute. Murmurs rose, sharp and angry. A false report to Child Services, filed from this HOA, without evidence. That's not enforcement, that's harassment. Cynthia leaned forward, face tightening. Mr. Maddox, this is not... I cut her off. Calm. I'm not finished. I pulled out Terrell's notebook scans. These are board minutes, original drafts from last year. Here are the altered public versions. Entire complaints removed, rewritten as landscaping disputes. That is called record tampering. Terrell shifted in his seat, throat working. His eyes flicked toward me, then he stood. I can confirm that, he said, voice low but carrying. The room stilled. I was there, I saw the votes, I saw what was deleted. Gasps erupted. Cynthia's face flushed red. Terrell, sit down. No, he said. His voice cracked, but he didn't stop. I've been silent too long, and it's cost this community its trust. The hall broke into scattered whispers, rising into outrage. Neighbors twisting in their chairs, pointing, shaking heads. Cynthia slammed the gavel. "Order! Order in this room!" But the sound was drowned out. I raised my hand. "One more." I slid the final paper across the table. The draft resolution recommending disciplinary action against me. Signed, dated, Friday night. This is your smoking gun. A decision made in a closed session, without notice, without process. That violates both state HOA law and federal housing statutes. And as of this morning, this entire case file has been submitted to HUD. An investigator has been assigned. The room exploded. Shouts, applause, anger. Cynthia's gavel banged helplessly, her face drained of color. For the first time, she looked small. I gathered my papers, tucked them into the folder, and stepped back. This meeting is over, not because I say so, but because you crossed a line you can't erase. The neighbors didn't leave quietly. They surrounded the table, voices rising in demand, some calling for Cynthia's resignation on the spot. The board looked rattled, caught between fear and fury. Only Terrell sat still, head bowed, but relief etched across his face. And me? I walked straight to the back, to Maya, to my son. I didn't need to fight anymore. The law was already moving. The neighborhood looked different the next morning, not physically. The lake still glittered under the sun, the houses still stood in their careful rows, but the air carried a tension that had shifted. Whispers spread faster than Cynthia's memos ever had. People weren't afraid anymore. They were angry. And that anger wasn't aimed at me. HUD acknowledged our case within 48 hours. An investigator was assigned, and the board received formal notice of federal review. Cynthia tried one last bluff email, calling the meeting informal, claiming minutes were drafts not intended for distribution. But the investigator wasn't buying it. The tampered records, the CPS voicemail, Terrell's testimony, it was enough to freeze her authority immediately. Within a week, Cynthia Bellamy was suspended from her role as HOA president, pending investigation. By the end of the month, she was out, permanently barred from holding any HOA office again. When the ruling came down, neighbors gathered in the community garden, this time without fear. Someone passed out lemonade. Kids ran barefoot through the grass. And for the first time since we moved in, Maya sat on the porch swing and smiled without looking over her shoulder. Terrell was elected interim president. He kept his word: transparent minutes, open agendas, and a pledge to protect, not punish. When he handed me the gavel for the vote that confirmed Cynthia's removal, his hand shook, but his eyes were clear. He'd chosen who he was, and the community chose with him. That night, after the crowd drifted home, I sat on the swing with my son asleep against my chest. The wood creaked under us, familiar and steady. I thought of all the times I'd told myself I was done fighting, that the battlefield was behind me. But the truth was, the battlefield just changed shape. Sometimes it looked like sand and gunfire. Sometimes it looked like bylaws and fines. Either way, the mission never really ends. Maya joined me, slipping her hand into mine. "You did it," she whispered. "No," I said, watching the water ripple under the moonlight. "We did it, and so did this community." For the first time, I believed it. The fight hadn't just been about my family, it was about every family that came after us. The swing rocked gently, a rhythm of peace that finally felt earned. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from. Because the next fight might not be mine. It might be yours.